In America's power arena, who wins the game? Welcome to American Power Play, your source for U.S. political...
The hearing room erupted like a volcano mid-explosion, papers cascading from Nancy Pelosi's trembling hands like confetti from a shattered piñata. Her meticulously applied makeup, layers of foundation and concealer that had withstood decades of political battles, could no longer mask the ghostly pallor overtaking her face, turning her into a wax figure of her former self. 3 of her senior staffers were already bolting for the exit, their designer heels clicking frantically across the marble floors like Morse code, signaling total surrender. Just 30 minutes earlier, she'd strutted into this very room with the unshakable swagger of American political royalty, mocking Senator Kennedy as a technological caveman and Senator eBay who bought his degree online, all while streaming her venom live to 2.3 million adoring followers. She had no inkling about the recording hidden in Kennedy's briefcase, the Swiss account statements, the encrypted family emails he'd somehow unearthed. The man she'd dismissed as a bumbling country lawyer sat there quietly, almost sorrowfully, clutching a single sheet of paper. He'd been waiting for this precise moment for 3 agonizing years. This is the story of how Nancy Pelosi's ironclad 40-year career imploded in exactly 47 minutes. A brutal, unforgiving takedown that exposed the rotten core of power and left one of Washington's untouchables in ruins. You're nothing but a technological dinosaur who thinks Wi-Fi is a type of fishing net. The words sliced through the Senate hearing room with the precision of a surgeon's blade. Nancy Pelosi, standing behind her microphone, like a maestro, orchestrating a symphony of humiliation. Her right hand, adorned with a gleaming Cartier watch that caught the light with every flourish, held an iPhone 15 Pro at the perfect 30-degree angle. The Instagram live viewer count climbed like a slot machine on a hot streak. 2.1 million, 2.2 million, 2.3 million. "Ladies and gentlemen," she purred into the camera, her voice laced with honeyed arsenic, "I present to you Senator Kennedy of Louisiana, a man who still uses a flip phone in 2024. She paused, letting the moment breathe, savoring the digital applause. Behind her, a perfectly choreographed ballet unfolded. Her social media manager's fingers flew across an iPad, uploading a meme that morphed Kennedy's kindly face into a Neanderthal's. The hashtag dinosaur senator bloomed across Twitter like a viral wildfire, her communications director leaning in to whisper 2.5 million viewers, with the satisfaction of a card dealer revealing a royal flush. Across the room, John Kennedy seemed to shrink into his chair. His brown suit, the color of Mississippi mud, hanging on his frame like a borrowed costume from a forgotten era. Age spots dotted his hands as he sketched something on a yellow legal pad, the kind sold at gas stations for $1.99. His ancient flip phone, a Motorola relic that belonged in the Smithsonian, sat beside him like a loyal but obsolete hound. The phone chose that exact moment to betray him. As Kennedy reached for his water glass, his hand shaking slightly, whether from age or nerves, unclear, his elbow caught the device's edge. It clattered across the desk, bounced once, twice, then plummeted to the floor with a plastic crack that echoed through the chamber like a gunshot in a library. "Oh dear," the words mumbled out in a thick Louisiana molasses drawl. Kennedy struggled to bend, his knees creaking audibly into the microphone, his fingers fumbling for the phone, missing twice before finally grasping it. These new gadgets sure are tricky. Pelosi's laugh sparkled like shattered champagne shards. "New, Senator? That phone is older than most of my interns." She turned to her audience, playing them like a Vegas crowd on a winning night. This is who Louisiana sends to make decisions about America's technological future. A man who can't even keep his phone on the table. The hearing room rippled with uncomfortable energy. A few Republican senators shifted in their seats, studying their own devices with sudden interest. Democrats tried to hide smirks behind raised hand. The gallery buzzed with barely suppressed excitement. Blood was in the water, and everyone could smell it. I bet the good senator here bought his law degree from the same place he got that phone, eBay. Pelosi let the punchline land, waiting for the laugh track of her live stream comments. Tell us, Senator Kennedy, did it come with free shipping? The insults came in waves now, each building on the last. While California leads the nation in innovation, Louisiana ranks 48th in technology adoption. Coincidence? I think not. She gestured at Kennedy's legal pad. This man probably thinks the cloud is just weather. Kennedy finally managed to retrieve his phone. As he straightened slowly, vertebra by vertebra, his hand brushed against a manila folder that had been sitting on his desk all along. It was thin, unremarkable, labeled in pencil with the kind of handwriting they don't teach anymore. NP Timeline, MS Pelosi. Kennedy's voice was soft, like distant thunder. Ms. Pelosi, you mentioned technology. That's real interesting. Pelosi's eyes flickered with desperate hope. Here was ground she could defend, territory where she could regain control. Her hand found her phone again, fingers caressing its smooth surface like a talisman. Finally, some honesty. The words rushed out, too eager, too loud. This is exactly what I'm talking about. We need leaders who understand the digital age, not relics who... That's why I asked my nephew from MIT to help me understand some things, Kennedy continued, as if she hadn't spoken. He pulled out a laptop that looked like it had survived several natural disasters. Duct tape holding one corner together, stickers from various Louisiana establishments covering the lid. Prejean's Restaurant, Tabasco, LSU Tigers. Bright boy, my nephew. Does something with computers I don't quite grasp. Quantum something or other. Kennedy opened the laptop with the care of someone defusing a bomb. But he taught me a few tricks. It flickered to life, displaying what looked like a PowerPoint from 1995. Comic Sans font, clip art of computers with wings, a title slide that read Louisiana Technology Initiative in rainbow colors. Now, for this committee hearing, they asked us to share documents electronically. Kennedy squinted at the screen. Very modern, very efficient. But these computer things are so confusing. He clicked the mouse once, twice, nothing happening. Would you mind helping me share my screen? I've got some charts about Louisiana's technology initiatives. Probably not as fancy as California's, but we're trying. Pelosi's eyes lit up with predatory glee. Here was her chance, a moment to humiliate him in front of whatever remained of her audience, to show the world the vast gulf between his incompetence and her sophistication. Of course, Senator, she purred, rising from her chair. Her heels clicked across the floor with metronomic precision. It's quite simple, even for someone of your generation. She reached his desk, her manicured nails hovering over his keyboard. Just click here, then here, and... Oh dear, Kennedy said, clicking the wrong button with the precision of a Swiss watchmaker pretending to be clumsy. Is that right? The main display screen, a massive LED array dominating the hearing room, flickered once. Then, instead of charts about Louisiana's technology initiatives, it filled with something else entirely. Text messages. Hundreds of them. The interface immediately recognizable. Pelosi's private messaging system, complete with her profile photo and verified blue checkmark. The room collectively inhaled. Oh my, Kennedy fumbled with the mouse, his movements suddenly erratic. That doesn't look right. How do I... but the messages were already scrolling, each one a dagger in Pelosi's carefully constructed image. March 15, 2024, 3:47 p.m. These idiots in my district actually think I care about their problems. Just smile and nod until November. March 18, 2024, 9:22 a.m. Chuck Schumer is such a dinosaur. Time for real leadership. I've got the votes when I need them. March 22, 2024, 11:45 p.m. The president's an embarrassment. I give him 6 months before we have to invoke the 25th. Already have Jeffries on board. Pelosi lunged for the laptop, her composed facade shattering like safety glass. Turn it off. That's private. This is illegal. I'm trying, Kennedy said, his fingers somehow making it worse. More messages cascaded across the screen. April 2nd, 2024, 4:15 p.m. Just met with Jiang from Beijing. The arrangements we discussed are in place. 5mm to the Singapore account as agreed. April 5th, 2024, 2:30 a.m. The insider trading questions are getting too close. Move everything to the Cayman accounts. Use the protocol we discussed. April 8th, 2024, 6:45 p.m. Tell the family to start using Signal for all communications. FBI sniffing around. Delete everything after reading. The press gallery erupted. Photographers surged forward, cameras clicking like automatic weapons. Reporters shouted questions that blended into a wall of sound. Kennedy continued clicking frantically, each accident revealing more devastating messages. April 15th, 2024, 10:30 a.m. That reporter from the Times is getting too curious about the foundation. Remind him about those photos from the Christmas party. He'll back off. April 20th, 2024, 3:30 p.m. The Pentagon contract for Paul Jr. is confirmed. 50mm. They didn't even check his qualifications. God, these people are stupid. April 25th, 2024, 7:45 p.m. Had to promise Senator Warren committee positions she doesn't deserve. Woman's almost as insufferable as Sanders, but I need their votes for now. Finally, mercifully, Kennedy managed to close the screen. The display went dark, leaving only the afterimage of corruption burned into everyone's retinas. There we go, he said, breathing heavily. So sorry about that. These machines are tricky for us old folks. Pelosi stood frozen beside his desk, her face a masterwork of ruined makeup and naked fury. Her hands shook visibly. A strand of hair had escaped her perfect styling, hanging like a flag of surrender. "You did that on purpose," she whispered, her voice raw. "Those messages were obtained illegally. This is a setup." "A setup?" Kennedy looked genuinely puzzled. "Ms. Pelosi, I can barely operate this laptop. Ask anyone. Last week, I accidentally sent my grocery list to the entire Senate. Caused quite a stir. Apparently, no one knew you could buy boudin in D.C. He paused, tilting his head thoughtfully. "Though I am curious about that message mentioning Jiang from Beijing and something about arrangements. What kind of arrangements would you have with Chinese officials?" Pelosi's lawyer, when had he arrived, was at her elbow now, whispering urgently. His face had the pale, sweaty look of a man watching his career implode in real time. Behind them, Pelosi's tech team huddled like trauma victims, trying to understand how their unhackable system had just performed digital seppuku on national television. "You know what's funny?" Kennedy mused, closing his ancient laptop with a satisfied click. "My nephew, the MIT boy, he told me something interesting. He said, people who mock others for being bad with technology often have the worst security practices themselves. Overconfidence, he called it." He slipped the phone into his pocket. "This old thing can't be hacked, can't be tracked. can't accidentally share private messages with the entire world. He smiled, the expression almost sympathetic. Sometimes, Ms. Pelosi, simpler is smarter. The hearing room was pandemonium. Reporters shouting questions about Beijing, about offshore accounts, about the FBI investigation mentioned in the messages. One particularly aggressive journalist was already reading the messages aloud into his phone, broadcasting them to the world. Pelosi's remaining staff had abandoned any pretense of loyalty. They gathered their belongings with the efficiency of people who'd practiced this moment in their nightmares, fleeing toward the exits like rats from a burning ship. "But don't worry," Kennedy added, his voice cutting through the chaos with surprising clarity. "I'm sure those messages were all taken out of context, just like your stock trades, right? Just like those family contracts. All innocent misunderstandings." He began gathering his papers, his movements deliberate. The duct tape on his laptop caught the light as he closed it. "Though I have to say," he continued, not looking at her, "for someone so proud of being high-tech, you sure didn't protect your data very well. Even us dinosaurs know to lock the henhouse." He paused, then added with genuine curiosity, "By the way, Ms. Pelosi, what kind of photos from the Christmas party would make a Times reporter back off? Must have been some party." The question hung in the air like a noose, waiting. Something fundamental shifted in the hearing room's atmosphere. It was like watching a storm system form in real time, pressure dropping, electricity building, the moment before lightning splits the sky. Kennedy set aside his battered laptop with the finality of a judge laying down a gavel. When he reached for his final folder, his movements had lost their calculated clumsiness. His hands were steady now, surgeon steady, as if he'd been waiting his entire life for this moment. The folder was different from the others, thinner, but somehow heavier, bound with a black ribbon like a mourning gift. When he opened it, several people in the gallery leaned forward unconsciously. "Ms. Pelosi," he began, and his voice had changed. The molasses drawl was still there, but underneath ran something harder, colder, like bedrock under delta mud. "We've talked about a lot of things today. Stocks, charity, family, technology." He looked up, and behind his thick glasses, his eyes were clear as winter stars. "But there's one more thing we need to discuss." The first document he pulled out made Pelosi's lawyer grab her arm. Banking stamps were visible even from the gallery. Swiss banks, Cayman institutions, Singapore financial authorities, the paper trail of hidden money. "Money," Kennedy said simply. "Specifically, money that's taken quite a journey. Senator, if you're about to make unfounded accusations," Pelosi's lawyer started, but his voice cracked like a teenager's. "Unfounded?" Kennedy's eyebrow arched with architectural precision. "Counselor, I'm just a simple country lawyer, but I know the difference between unfounded and documented." He tapped the papers. "These are all obtained through proper legal channels, Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, to be specific. Amazing what they'll share when federal crimes are involved." He held up the first document, angling it so the cameras could catch the official seals. "Let's start with something simple. Wire transfer, March 15, 2021, $3 million from Burisma Holdings. That's a Ukrainian energy company, to an account in the Cayman Islands." His finger traced the path like a teacher at a blackboard. From there, it went to Switzerland, Credit Suisse, private banking division. From there to a shell company in Cyprus, then to a trust in Delaware. He looked up. "That's a lot of traveling for money, like it's trying to hide where it came from or where it's going." "I don't know anything about international banking," Pelosi started. "Of course not," Kennedy agreed. "That's why you have people for that, like your brother-in-law, Thomas D'Alessandro." This Delaware trust? It's in his name. Well, technically in the name of TDA Holdings. But that's him. He pulled out another document. Here's where it gets interesting. 3 days after this Ukrainian money arrived in your brother-in-law's trust, you killed House Resolution 247. That was the one calling for increased oversight of Ukrainian energy companies. Curious timing. The room had gone beyond quiet into something deeper, like the silence inside a confessional. Kennedy pulled out more papers, laying them out like tarot cards. April 2021, $5 million from a Chinese pharmaceutical company. Same route, Cayman, Switzerland, Cyprus, Delaware. Different trust this time. This one's in your maiden name, D'Alessandro. He consulted his notes. 1 week after this payment, you personally intervened to kill the Pharmaceutical Supply Chain Security Act, the one that would have restricted Chinese companies from controlling critical medicine supplies. Another curious coincidence. This is preposterous, Pelosi's voice cracked like ice under pressure. Is it? Kennedy pulled out a document covered in bank stamps. June 2021, $2 million from a Russian oligarch, well, technically from his Crete holding company, but we know who owns it. July 2021, $4 million from a Saudi investment fund. September 2021, $3 million from an Iranian proxy through Qatar. He looked up, and now the country lawyer was completely gone. In his place sat a man who'd spent 3 years building an airtight case, brick by brick, document by document. Every transfer follows the same pattern. Every payment precedes a policy shift. The Ukrainian money came before you protected their energy sector. The Chinese funds arrived before you killed pharmaceutical oversight. The Russian payment preceded your opposition to the sanctions bill. He pulled out an iPad, surprisingly modern for him, and connected it to the display system with practiced ease. No fumbling this time. But here's what really seals it, he said. A financial tracking diagram appeared on screen, lines connecting banks and shell companies like a spider's web. My nephew from MIT, he's not just good with computers, he's a forensic accountant, has a gift for following money. The diagram zoomed in, showing specific transactions. Every one of these payments eventually found its way to accounts connected to your family. Not directly, too smart for that, but through trusts, through shell companies, through investment vehicles. The money always came home. Pelosi had gone the color of old parchment. Her lawyer was pulling at her arm, trying to get her to leave, to stop the hemorrhaging of evidence. But Kennedy wasn't finished. He pulled out a small digital recorder, the kind journalists use. This is a recording from your home office, March 10th, 2024. Your security system backed up to the cloud, the same cloud you thought I didn't understand. He pressed play. Pelosi's voice filled the room, clear and unmistakable. The vote's tomorrow. Tell Beijing we need the second payment by midnight. Switzerland, not Cayman this time. They're watching Cayman. Yes, I'll make sure the amendment dies in committee. 5 mm as agreed. Another voice responded, accented but clear. And if questions arise? Pelosi's recorded voice laughed, a sound like crystal breaking. Who's going to question me? I own this city. I own these people. They're all either bought or blackmailed. The few clean ones are too stupid to matter. Kennedy stopped the recording. In the silence that followed, you could hear Pelosi's breathing, rapid and shallow. That's your voice, isn't it, Ms. Pelosi? Kennedy asked gently. Talking about killing legislation in exchange for $5 million from Beijing? He pulled out another recording device. Would you like to hear the one from last week? The one where you discuss what to do about the federal investigator who was getting too close. You used the word terminate. I don't think you meant his employment. Pelosi's legs gave out. She didn't fall so much as deflate, sinking into her chair like a punctured balloon. Her perfect posture, maintained through 40 years of political theater, finally broke. Kennedy stood slowly, his full height seeming to fill the room. When he spoke, his accent had faded to just a whisper of Louisiana, like morning mist burning off the bayou. "Nancy Patricia Pelosi," he said, each word precise as a scalpel cut, "you have spent decades building an empire of corruption. You've sold your office, your influence, your vote, and your country to the highest bidder. You've taken money from our enemies. You've killed legislation that would have protected Americans. You've enriched your family with blood money." He gestured to the FBI agents who had been waiting by the doors. They moved forward with the inevitability of a tide. "Gentlemen," Kennedy said, "I believe you have work to do. The evidence package includes documentation of money laundering, bribery, violations of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, conspiracy to obstruct justice, and, based on that last recording, conspiracy to commit murder of a federal officer." As the agents approached, Pelosi found her voice one last time. It came out as a whisper, then built to a shriek. You planned this. You knew everything. This whole hearing was a trap." Kennedy allowed himself the ghost of a smile. "Ms. Pelosi, you called me a dinosaur, said I thought Wi-Fi was a fishing net, mocked my education, laughed at my flip phone." He pulled out the old Motorola, looking at it fondly. "You thought I was just another stupid Southerner you could humiliate for your audience." He slipped the phone into his pocket. "But while you were streaming for likes and making memes, I was building a case. 3 years of careful investigation, every document legally obtained, every recording lawfully captured, every piece of evidence bulletproof." The FBI agents were reading Pelosi her rights now, their words cutting through her sobs. Her empire, built over 40 years, had crumbled in exactly 47 minutes. The news broke like a dam bursting. Within minutes, #PelosiGate had overtaken every other trending topic worldwide. CNN's breaking news chyron simply read, "Pelosi arrested," in letters that seemed to scream. Fox News had already prepared a special report logo, Lady Justice holding scales made of $100 bills. MSNBC's anchors sat in stunned silence for 17 seconds of dead air before someone remembered they were live. The footage was everywhere. Nancy Pelosi in handcuffs, mascara streaming down her face, designer suit wrinkled like discarded wrapping paper. The image that would define her legacy. Not the first female speaker, not the political powerhouse, but a broken woman being led away by federal agents. By 6:00 p.m., the Democratic caucus had called an emergency meeting in a windowless room in the Capitol basement. The mood that of passengers on a sinking ship deciding who got the lifeboats. "We need complete separation," Chuck Schumer said, his voice steady, but his hands trembling as he adjusted his glasses. "Everything she touched is toxic. Every bill she sponsored, every committee she served on, every photo op. It all has to go." Hakeem Jeffries, who'd been preparing to succeed Pelosi for years, looked like he'd aged a decade in an hour. "There are questions about everyone who was close to her. The FBI wants to interview half our caucus. Then we cooperate fully," Schumer snapped. "Nobody protects anybody. This ends here." Republicans gathered in their own emergency session, but the mood was different. Cautious, like bomb disposal experts approaching an unknown device. "This cuts across party lines," Mitch McConnell warned, his Kentucky drawl more pronounced under stress. "Kennedy's got more folders. I've seen them. If we gloat now, we might be explaining our own wire transfers tomorrow." Kevin McCarthy nodded nervously. 3 of his biggest donors had already called, worried about their own arrangements being exposed. The international fallout was immediate and devastating. In Kiev, emergency shredders ran through the night at Burisma Holdings. The Ukrainian prosecutor general announced an internal review of all energy sector contracts. Beijing's response was swift and brutal. 3 intelligence officers connected to Jiang from Beijing simply vanished. State media ran a single item denouncing Western corruption and false accusations. In Moscow, oligarchs quietly moved money from Swiss accounts to even darker hiding places. The Kremlin issued a statement calling the allegations American political theater, while secretly purging anyone who'd had contact with Pelosi. The Saudi investment fund announced it was reassessing all international partnerships. Several princes booked impromptu vacations to countries without extradition treaties. At FBI headquarters, Director Christopher Wray held a press conference that would later be studied in law enforcement as a masterclass in controlled revelation. Based on evidence presented today, we are opening investigations into 47 current and former members of Congress, 23 lobbyists, 16 foreign nationals, and over 200 financial transactions. This may be the largest corruption investigation in American history. He paused, letting the numbers sink in. I want to be clear. This investigation will follow the evidence wherever it leads, regardless of party affiliation or position. No one is above the law. The financial markets responded with algorithmic panic. The Dow dropped 800 points in after-hours trading as investors tried to calculate which companies might be caught in the expanding web. Pelosi family stocks were frozen, their combined value of $200 million suddenly worthless paper. In San Francisco, Paul Pelosi Sr. sat in his study, watching his wife's arrest on endless loop across 5 different news channels. His phone, the landline, his cell, was already in FBI custody, ringing constantly. Lawyers, reporters, party officials, family members. He let it ring. Their children had lawyered up immediately. Paul Jr.'s attorney held a brief press conference. My client knew nothing of these alleged activities and will cooperate fully with investigators. But the family text messages Kennedy had revealed told a different story. The FBI already had warrants. Meanwhile, Senator John Kennedy had returned to his office, where his staff found him in his favorite leather chair, reading a biography of Huey Long. His ancient flip phone sat charging on the desk, occasionally buzzing with calls he didn't answer. "Senator," his chief of staff said, almost breathless, "you're the most famous person in America right now. Every network wants you. The Times, the Post, the Journal. They're all begging for interviews. Foreign leaders are calling. The president wants to speak with you." Kennedy marked his place in the book with a gas station receipt and looked up mildly. "That's nice. Did you check if they've got red beans and rice in the cafeteria today? All this excitement's made me hungry." "But, Senator," the aide persisted, "you just took down the most powerful woman in Congress. You exposed a massive international conspiracy. Don't you want to—" "What I want," Kennedy interrupted gently, "is to call my wife and tell her I'll be home for Sunday dinner. What I want is to take my grandson fishing this weekend like I promised. What I want is to serve the people of Louisiana who sent me here to do a job." He stood, stretching like a man who'd finished a long day's work. "I did my job today. Tomorrow, there'll be more to do. That's how it works." The chief of staff took the letter and paused at the door. "Senator, for what it's worth, I'm proud to work for you. What you did today, that took courage." Kennedy smiled that gentle smile. "No, it took evidence and patience. Courage is what the whistleblowers show when they come forward, knowing their careers might be destroyed. Courage is what journalists show when they publish truth that powerful people want suppressed. What I did today was just my job. After she left, Kennedy gathered his folders and his briefcase. His eye caught the small framed photograph on his desk, him being sworn in as senator, his hand on a Bible, his wife beside him. He remembered the weight of that oath, the solemnity of the moment, the promise he'd made to support and defend the Constitution. "Well, Lord," he said softly to the empty office, "I tried to keep that promise today. I hope it was enough." 3 floors below, in a cramped office that bore none of the trappings of power it had once enjoyed, Adam Schiff sat alone. His staff had abandoned him hours ago, fleeing to avoid association with his disgrace. His phone lay dark on the desk. He'd turned it off after seeing his Twitter mentions, after watching his follower count plummet, after receiving the carefully worded text from Speaker Jeffries that basically amounted to, "You're on your own." On his computer screen was a draft resignation statement his lawyer had written. 3 paragraphs claiming health reasons, thanking constituents for their support, maintaining that he had always acted with integrity. The standard politician's non-apology apology designed to end his career with minimal admission of wrongdoing. All he had to do was release it, and the pain would move on. Perhaps rehabilitate his image over time with a book or a teaching position at some liberal university where his lies about Trump would be forgiven if not celebrated. His finger hovered over the send button, but something stopped him. Some last vestige of the man he'd been before ambition and cameras and speaking fees had corrupted him. Some memory of why he'd gone into public service in the first place, to make a difference, to serve something larger than himself, to be a voice for truth and justice. When had that man disappeared? When had he become someone who could lie 73 times and never feel shame? When had he decided that the cause justified any means, that his vision of the greater good excused any deception? He couldn't pinpoint the moment. It had been gradual, he supposed, a slow erosion of principles, one compromised value at a time, until he'd become someone he wouldn't have recognized a decade ago. Kennedy's words echoed in his mind. It's not too late for redemption. Was it, though? Could a man who'd lied so systematically, so publicly, so profitably, ever earn back trust? Could he ever look his children in the eye and tell them honestly that he'd served with integrity? Schiff deleted the resignation statement his lawyer had written. Slowly, painfully, he began typing his own. To the people of California's 28th District, and to all Americans, I owe you an apology. Today, Senator John Kennedy presented evidence that I made statements about the Russia investigation that were not supported by the underlying intelligence I had seen. He showed that I claimed to have evidence of collusion when the intelligence professionals I questioned under oath said no such evidence existed. He demonstrated that I altered the tone and emphasis of my memo about FISA abuses in ways that were misleading. He was right. I convinced myself that I was fighting for something important, holding a dangerous president accountable, protecting our democracy from foreign interference, defending our institutions. Those were real concerns, legitimate concerns. But somewhere along the way, I allowed those concerns to justify behavior that was wrong. I made claims on television that went beyond what the evidence supported. I presented assessments as facts when they were really opinions. I allowed my certitude about Trump's unfitness for office to lead me to speak with certainty about things I could not prove. This was wrong. I misled the American people. I exploited your trust for political purposes, and I am profoundly sorry. I could offer excuses, the pressure of the moment, the genuine threat I believed Trump posed, the intensity of political polarization. But excuses are not the same as reasons, and neither excuses nor reasons can undo the damage I did to public trust. Senator Kennedy was also correct that I had advanced knowledge of the Ukraine whistleblower complaint and was not fully forthcoming about that knowledge. I believed I was protecting the whistleblower and following proper procedure, but I should have been more transparent with the American people about my office's involvement. I am announcing today that I will not seek re-election. This is not because I am being forced out, though I understand many would prefer that I resign immediately. This is because I need time away from politics to reflect on how I lost my way, and because the people of California deserve a representative whose integrity is not in question. I will serve out my term, working on constituent services and avoiding the media spotlight that I once courted so eagerly. I will use this time to make amends where possible and to learn the lessons I should have learned long ago about humility, honesty, and the limits of certainty. I failed you. I failed myself. And I failed the ideals I claimed to champion. I am sorry. I hope that, in time, my acknowledgement of these failures might contribute in some small way to a political culture where admitting error is possible, where leaders are judged not just by their worst moments, but by their willingness to grow from them. But I understand if that hope is unrealistic. I understand if my apology comes too late and costs me too little. I understand if you cannot forgive me. All I can do now is tell the truth, even though the truth condemns me. Perhaps especially because it condemns me. I was wrong. I am sorry. And I will try to do better. Sincerely, Adam B. Schiff, Member of Congress. He read it over 3 times, his hand poised over the delete button before finally hitting send. And it would cost him everything: the comfortable retirement plans, the lucrative book deals, the friendly speaking circuit. His defenders would abandon him. His enemies would say the apology wasn't enough, and both sides would probably be right. But it was true. And that, he realized with something approaching peace, was what mattered. In his office 3 floors above, John Kennedy's phone buzzed with an alert. He pulled it out, read Schiff's statement, and felt something release in his chest. A tension he hadn't realized he'd been carrying. "Good," he said softly. "That's good." It wasn't redemption, not yet. But it was truth. And truth, Kennedy had learned over a lifetime, was where redemption always began. He looked out over the Capitol one last time before heading home. The building glowed in the evening light, solid and enduring, a monument to the idea that self-governance was possible if people of good faith worked at it honestly. "Keep working at it," Kennedy murmured, then turned out his light and headed for the airport. He had crawfish to catch and grandchildren to teach, and both of those things, he thought, were considerably more important than anything that happened in Washington. The bayou was calling him home.